Well, friends, thank you for your patience. Last week we had the ordination service of Father Roman Kobolensky, and so a big Axios goes out to him, and a big Axia goes out to his beautiful wife Erica. May the Lord God bless you in your ministry, Father Roman. It's a true sort of beautiful testimony to the fact that our Lord has not left us orphans, and that he continually calls men to the priesthood and calls clergy families to ministry in this beautiful way in our tradition. And so I'm looking forward to working in the Lord's vineyard with you very much in the future, Father Roman and Pani Erica. Maybe we should sing them Axios right now. Ready? So Axios means, for those of you who are wondering what I'm talking about, in the ordination service in our tradition, whether it's to the subdiaconate, to the diaconate, to the priesthood, we always sing Axios, which means he is worthy. And so as the bishop presents the newly ordained priest with his vestments, at each one of the different articles, the priest kisses that vestment, and he kisses the hand of the bishop, and then everyone sings Axios. And so it means he is worthy. It's sort of the acclamation of assent of the people, of the fact that they realize that they have a new shepherd in their midst. And so they think that he is worthy. So why don't we sing that for Father Roman and Pani Erica right now? Ready, Kim? Here we go. Axios, 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 Axios. And you always do everything 3 times. And you always do everything quietly because the baby's sleeping. So like halfway through that, Kim had mentioned that. So anyway, Axios, congratulations, Father and Pani. So today we are going to talk a little bit about bioethical issues when it comes to the bedroom. It's a great question offered by a good friend of ours who sent me, in our last episode 2 weeks ago, she sent me a news story about what's going on in Ukraine. So this is the backstory sort of how this question got brought up this week. So there is a practice in Ukraine, as well as in other parts of the world, called surrogacy, which essentially entails a woman renting her womb for the growing of another person's baby. And so surrogate motherhood has to do with infertile couples who cannot sort of conceive on their own. And so they will go and they will usually partake in IVF, in vitro fertilization, or other types of sort of bioethical methods that they use, or biotechnological things that they use in order to sort of impregnate another woman. And then that woman carries that baby to term, and then that baby is then given to the biological parents. So is that wrong? If it is wrong, why is it wrong? And what's going on in Ukraine right now? You know, in relation to that. I'm sure it's not just happening in Ukraine, by the way. I'm sure it's happening in all sorts of other places. Let me answer the last question first, and that'll kind of help to sort of show the morality of that for the first 2 questions. So what is happening in Ukraine now, because of the coronavirus, because of COVID-19, international travel has been suspended. So you can't really land in Ukraine. You know, you can't come from other countries like Canada, the United States, to pick up your baby that you impregnated this woman with. And so the news article that was sent talks about how there is a room with these children who have no parents. You know, they've been birthed, and they are there waiting for their moms and dads to come and get them. An absolute tragedy, if you think about it. Okay, an absolute tragedy.
I'm not going to think too much about it.
We're not going to think too much about it because it truly is a terrible situation. Let me just read a little bit of that story just so that we've got a little bit of a background information here. So Ukraine's human rights ombudsman, told Al Jazeera on May 15th that the number of waiting babies will likely grow to thousands if travel restrictions continue. Even before the coronavirus pandemic, reports emerged of at least one baby born via surrogacy in Ukraine, abandoned by the Americans who intended to raise her. A surrogate mother at Bioethics can expect to be paid $15,000 to $17,000 for carrying a child. And so that's sort of where that's at as far as what's going on with the background. So is this wrong? Well, I think that we can sort of see the unfortunate results of the unfortunate results of the coronavirus has sort of illustrated or highlighted the inherent evil of this act, because it is an inherently evil act. Okay, it is something that is wrong, and it's something that's wrong on a number of levels. If we turn to the Catechism of the Catholic Church, we can see that the Catechism does speak about that in paragraphs 2,376 to 2,378. So there's 3 specific paragraphs on these sorts of things. Okay, and so the first thing it does is it betrays the spouse's right to become a father and a mother only through each other. Okay, so what we have done ultimately is we've taken the sexual act and we've outsourced it. Okay, we've allowed someone else to be part of the sexual union of those two people. And the church will say, whenever you interfere with that action, you've crossed a line. Now, I'm going to answer this question specifically about surrogacy, okay? But then later on, I want to talk about sort of the ethical tradition of the church as far as acts go, and the importance of actions, and why ethical thinking is important when it comes to actions specifically. So let's keep that in mind for later on. But anyway, the first thing it's done is it's betrayed the spouse's right to become father and mother through only each other. It's also it's also interfered with the child's right to be born of a father and a mother, known to him and bound to each other by marriage. Okay, so it's an affront to both the spouses and to the child on that level. Now, there are other worse things as well. The next paragraph, 2377, talks about how if you dissociate the sexual act from the procreative act, things happen. So I already kind of mentioned that, right? With these sorts of things, I'm just trying to read this really quick here. Yeah, so whenever that act is sort of changed from the two things that sex is, procreative and unitive, there's a problem. And you see that in all sorts of other cases too, right? In the bedroom with contraception, which is also a moral evil, okay? It separates the unitive and the procreative elements of the act. That action means those two things. And so if you can come up with any sort of other ways that those two elements are split from one another, you can see that it's done violence to that. So if we take a look at this action, okay, paying to have a woman outsource her body in order to impregnate her with someone else's child is a type of rape. Okay, it's a type of use of that woman and her body, okay, in a way that is immoral. So it is a form of prostitution. At least it might not be a form of prostitution on the intention level, but it's definitely a form of prostitution in what it brings about, right? We have depersonalized this woman and turned her into a baby-making machine as opposed to a spouse, right? You can do the same thing on the other side of the equation, right? In this case, this woman is only being used for her procreative potential. On the other side, you can flip it around and say you just want to use someone for pleasure. You know, you just want to use them for the sexual pleasure that they can give you, and then you don't care about the responsibility on the other side of the spectrum. So you can fall off on both sides, and it's wrong in both cases. This woman has been turned into a slave in many ways. So this act, the act of surrogacy, is wrong for the same reasons that prostitution are wrong and slavery are wrong. It has to do with the depersonalization of a human being that you have turned into a machine or a slave. And so that's where it's at with that. It also deprives the child, as we read, of the fact that they should have a mother and a father, and they don't. Okay. Now you can argue, well, of course they do. It's just that they came into existence through this sort of technological advantage that we now have of IVF and surrogacy. Well, what it's done is it's turned that baby into a commodity, right? This American couple that has abandoned their product, you know, was going to have, you know, was going to go and get their goods delivered, but that's a person we're talking about. That's their son or daughter that they're talking about. That is not, that's not, you know, depersonalized. Thank you. This is the bioethical cup, right? It's not the skull one. It's a different one.
Oh.
That's okay. This is the one. This is the one that we drink from when we talk about bioethics.
Right.
Thank you,
Here,
sweetheart.
let me.
No. This is perfect. I like it. Don't get it dirty. It's fine. This is perfect.
Let me adjust it.
Oh, okay. We're gonna adjust it. It's the bioethics cup. Good. So that kind of explains surrogacy. The other thing that we have to keep in mind, thank you so much, sweetheart, is the other thing we have to keep in mind is the fact that with IVF, in vitro fertilization, the way that functions is to make a number, like a batch, I think is what it's called. I could be wrong. Someone who knows what they're talking about better can correct me on this. But basically a batch of children is what it turns into, right? They won't call them children. They'll call them embryos or something else. But basically a batch of children. And then they will choose the strongest one. They'll choose the one that has the characteristics that are wanted or that are, you know, they're not going to have genetic abnormalities or whatever the case is, and the other ones are discarded. Okay? So necessarily in this process, you have abortions. You have babies that are conceived and then terminated. So in order to have that happen, you know, that's what happens. Now, I don't know if that happens every time. I don't know if that happens every time. So someone who knows a bit more on that regard can tell me if that happens every time. I know it does happen some of the time, and that's wrong. That's wrong. You can't have a child terminated for another one to live. That's morally abhorrent. So we have
That's where we
that
get the
example.
adoption of frozen embryos.
Yes, and that goes to a further discussion. And so the further discussion, we're really sort of moving. I wasn't intending on going there, but
Sorry,
that's okay. So that's all right. It is a thing. So there is a movement because there are some of these embryos are frozen. They're kept, and they have a shelf life. I hate to use that word when we're talking about human beings, but they do have a shelf life. I think it's 2 years. I could be wrong with that. They can survive for 2 years being frozen in this early state. No, I don't think it is, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong with that. Someone who knows more, please correct me. But there's a movement to adopt those babies within the Catholic Church. There's a group of people that say we would like to have a child and we cannot, and so we would like to have this baby, and we can't. And so we would like to adopt this baby. Now, this baby is already in existence. We're not going to be doing something that hasn't already been done, right? And without us adopting this baby, we are going to be, that baby is going to die, right? So, but what has to happen in order for this to succeed, right? Exactly what I just said was wrong, and that was that you have to have surrogacy in order for this to happen, okay? So it would be surrogacy within the womb of the parent that wants that baby. It should be, at least. I suppose they could turn around and say, well, we're infertile because I can't carry, I can't maintain that pregnancy, and therefore I need a surrogate in order to do that. So we bump into all of these different, once again, thorny issues bioethically. So that's sort of something new, and to my knowledge, it hasn't been authoritatively discussed at length enough yet to come down on it. If it's like there's not been an official promulgation about that. I don't know if that's true. That's to my knowledge. So
we had that question and we found that answer.
Yeah,
together?
I think that right now it's in a state of don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
because
right.
even though you're trying to do a good thing,
Right.
two wrongs don't make a right.
You can't do a good thing. You can't do a bad thing you can't do a bad thing in a right way, and you can't do a wrong thing in. Wait, how does that work? You can't do a wrong thing right, I guess is the best sort of way of doing it. But you also can't use bad means to a good end. Okay, so you can't use evil means to accomplish some good. Is what we're saying. So it's not consequentialist. It's not like, oh, it turned out okay, therefore it was all right. No, you did something that was wrong in order to come out with something that's right. And that's the sort of way it goes. So yeah, so that's the final word. Is like it's the word that it's at right now is don't do that because you can't. It's wrong. We're back to surrogacy, like I said. Good. I hope I was clear on that. Thank you for jumping in. Clear as mud. Clear as mud. Good. So, are there any questions from the floor? Do we know?
No, not that I've seen. Let me check the other one.
We're gonna see if there's any questions from the floor.
I'm just unpacking groceries.
We're unpacking groceries here.
No, nothing. There's 10 people watching though. Hello everyone.
Hello, everyone.
I don't know who's watching though. It never tells me.
That's okay. Good. So I promised that I would talk about a little bit of the greater question of acts. Okay, in moral discussions.
Oh, Anastasia says that it also encourages the production of more of these babies being conceived and guarantees more profit for the companies who engage in this activity.
Exactly. It's a commodity. You've turned people into business. So absolutely, Anastasia, you're right. It feeds into an idea that you can buy and sell human beings, right? So it's slavery. Like that's where we're at, right? And I think that it comes out originally from an idea of what we now call reproductive rights. Reproductive rights. Reproductive rights, seen in a good way, is different than what reproductive rights has now become, I would say, in sort of modern parlance. And that's that sort of, I have the right to become a mother or a father. A Christian can never really approach motherhood or fatherhood on the ground of rights. It just doesn't work that way. It's a vocation. It's always a gift. Children are always received as a gift from the Lord. They're not something that are owed to us or that we've got coming or that are deserved or whatever the case is. And so that's a very, very important sort of distinction to make that way. And when we take steps to try to protect our reproductive rights by outsourcing the sexual act, renting space in someone else's womb, or whatever the case is, it just doesn't work that way. Okay, so it's wrong. So that's a very good point, Anastasia. Thank you for bringing that up. Now, the place of acts, right? So what constitutes a moral choice, right? What constitutes a moral choice? Now, there's three elements in Catholic social teaching that define that. Okay, you've got the action itself, and then you have the intention, and then you have the situation in which it takes place. Essentially, there are different ways of calling these same sort of things. But the action itself can be intrinsically good or intrinsically bad. And so you can't sort of, like I said before, like when Pani Kim was talking about, look at that, I've already referred to you as Pani Kim instead of just Kim. We're already back to our formal bingo. But when Kim was talking about you can't have a good you can't have a good intention and a bad action to get there, right? It's the same thing. You can have an intrinsically immoral action that your intention does not sway. Okay, so another way of sort of saying that is you can't lust right. You know, lust is wrong. It's wrong by itself. You can't lust in a good way. You know, you can't have a good intention trump an evil thing that you're doing in the first place. So the action itself, the intention, and then the third thing is the circumstances. The circumstances don't change if it's right or wrong. It just changes the gravity of how damaging, how bad, or how good it is. Right? Someone who's got more authority lying to you has more of a destructive element than someone who does not have that type of authority. Right? If our leaders who are in a state of authority are messing up, well, the gravity of that evil is higher because of the situation, the circumstances that they're in. So that's where the saying of my other cup comes from, with St. John Chrysostom talking about how the road to hell is paved with the skulls of bishops and priests, spoken himself by an archbishop.
So Tyler wants to know, is that along the lines of St. Thomas Aquinas on the rule of the double effect?
That is a great question. So the rule of double effect does factor into this, Tyler. So I'll answer your question sort of in two steps. So the principle of double effect is related to this, but that's not where it comes out of. This is actually even sort of before. This is from Aristotelian kind of thinking. Aquinas was very informed by Aristotelian thinking, and so this is sort of a philosophical, unbroken tradition all the way up. The principle of double effect has to do with the fact that there is an unfortunate yet necessary thing that will happen, which is not sought in and of itself, right? But that will happen if we go down a certain path, right? So, for example, the principle of double effect is used very much in just war theory. You know, in a just war, people will innocent people will suffer. You know, and you don't want that. It's not sought, but you have to engage in a just war, despite the fact that will happen. And so, the principle of double effect can be used in that regard. The principle of double effect can be is you can see the principle at work. Sorry, it's not used. It's just the principle that can be seen in an ectopic pregnancy, for example. In an ectopic pregnancy, a woman has a baby implant in her fallopian tube, and because of that, her life is at risk. You know, she'll die if she carries that baby to term. And so what will happen is the doctors will go in and they will remove that fallopian tube. Now, the principle of double effect is the fact that that baby dies. That baby's life was not sought in the first place, and so it's the principle of double effect that's at play in that regard. So it's not an abortion, right? And this is where some people will argue philosophically against it. They'll say, oh, you're just sort of cutting words or whatever the case is. But it's the removal of that tube, and unfortunately that baby is also removed in order to protect the mother's life. So that's the principle of double effect. That's a great question. That's a great question. If you were to go in and they can do this and just remove that baby, okay, it would not be the principle of double effect anymore. The principle of double effect because you would be therefore just removing that child. You would be essentially killing that child, right? So it's a different in action. There's a difference there, and so that's the difference. They're going to take the tube out. They got to take the tube out. So it's not technically an abortion that way, even if consequentially it ends the same way, which is the fact that the mother's life is spared and the baby, unfortunately, that baby's life ends. So that's the thing. So we can't do this sort of thing with consequentialist philosophy or reasoning. We are not utilitarian. We are lovers. It's a different thing. So our whole reasoning is there. Are they there?
Yeah.
Hello, John and Debbie. I hope you're enjoying coffee. I'm doing, as you can see, my bioethics talk. Do we have any more questions there, Kimmy?
No.
No other questions from the floor?
No, nothing from the peanut gallery.
Nothing from the peanut gallery. Okay, let's talk about then the advantage of focusing on acts. So you can see the beauties, I would say, of the Catholic moral tradition. This is my personal opinion. You can disagree with me if you want, but I think you can see the beauties of the Catholic moral tradition in the fact that it is worked out as schematically as it is in regards to actions. Actions can be the ability to sort of say, well, has the action been tampered with? You know, has the sexual act been tampered with? Okay, well, if it has, then we can see that there's an issue there. Well, there are other factors that go into that, right? Of course, there are other factors that go into that. You know, intention goes into that. Like I mentioned, the circumstances go into that. All sorts of other things factor in. But because of the Catholic Church's sort of philosophical method of moral thinking, of ethics, focusing on the act, it's very useful in the modern world, especially when other things sort of come out, right? We've got all sorts of different bioethical things that are being raised nowadays. Surrogacy is actually sort of old news in regards to certain other things that are coming out. But if you focus on the act, right? If you take a good look at actions and weigh them in regards to the ordering that I had sort of given, where you have the action itself, then the intention, and then the circumstance, you have the ability to meet those new challenges in a very interesting way, in a very precise way, without sort of the intention coming in and saying, well, I wanted a good thing to come out of it. Well, you know, it doesn't change the fact that what you did was an evil, you know, was wrong that way. So it doesn't make things black and white. I don't want you to come away thinking that that's what I said, but you know, not black and white as in ethical thinking is easy, but black and white as in there is a right and a wrong. It's definitely black and white in that case, you know. We are not moral absolutists. Or sorry, we're not moral relativists. We are moral absolutists.
I was going to say.
Yeah. Whew, that was
Watch
a close
yourself
one.
there.
We are moral absolutists, and you'll never meet a saint who wasn't a moral absolutist. It's an impossibility to be a moral relativist and a saint. I would argue that it's an impossibility to be a moral relativist and a Christian, but that's up for debate, I guess, by some people. Questions?
No, nothing.
Nothing.
Okay, just wait 1 minute though, because there is a lag.
Yeah.
Right, so you're still talking on
the thing. Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Just like wait a minute.
Okay, so in the meantime, I'm going to go to the connection that we just...
How are you supposed to wait for questions if you're going to start something?
Well, it's okay. They'll come up and we'll ask them. We'll go back.
All right.
You want me to just like sit here and stare at the camera for a minute? You're the one telling me to keep talking, keep talking.
Fine.
So I want to talk about... Oh, good.
See?
Oh, we
I
got
told
it.
you what
Okay, very good.
How does the community not become judge and jury of another's action and the impact of their actions? For example, those who teach in a Catholic school but do not live a faithful life. So how do you not become judge and jury of another's action and the impact of that action?
And then give me the example again.
Someone who teaches in a Catholic school but does not live a faithful life. So how do you not
Okay,
how does the community not judge
Yeah.
and condemn that person?
Okay. Well,
Should they not?
I would split those two things. I think there is a type of judgment that is permissible. I think condemnation is not permissible. So I suppose those two things are very different. You know, our Lord teaches us how it is that we are to judge situations. You know, what our Lord did not do is he did not come in and say, everything's permissible, everything's okay, everything is
awesome!
Whatever, yeah, like the Lego song. He taught us to love, okay? Now, in our modern world, we get that confused because we sometimes forget what love is, right? But love is not permitting everything, all right? Love is wanting the best for that person. And if there is something that is in the way of the best for that person, love says that we gotta bring it up. You know, we gotta say that that's not the case. Now, in the case of a Catholic school,
she gave another.
Oh, she gave another example. Okay, sorry.
A couple who uses a surrogate.
A couple who uses a surrogate.
Yeah.
Okay, the couple who uses a surrogate has engaged in a moral evil. Should they be condemned? Is it in my purview to say, well, you used the surrogate and now you're going to hell? I don't make those calls, okay? But a Christian who loves that couple has to say to them, or should say to them, in love, in a situation where it's going to be received properly, in a situation where you're going to be able to lead that couple to a deeper, you know, relationship with each other and with Christ, even if it's hard. You know, what you did was wrong. You know,
that child shouldn't be.
It's what just because what they engaged in was wrong. Yet another opportunity to point out the fact that speaking about actions is a good way to theologize as far as ethics go, right? You can love the person and hate the sin. In fact, you have to do it. I would argue that loving the person necessitates hating the sin. Because if sin is the thing that separates people from God forever, you have to hate that if you love the person, right? You gotta want the best. The same way that you would hate a cancer cell that's killing the one you love. You know, you do everything you can to eradicate that cancer cell because of the love that you have for that person. So I think that where we hinge on is that condemn. You know, it's not our job to condemn people. Everyone stands before the judge at the end. Now, we will also stand before the judge not just with our own actions, right, but with, like Cain and Abel, right? Am I my brother's keeper? Well, it turns out you are your brother's keeper. You know, it turns out that family is about making sure that you're on the straight and narrow and helping, you know, guiding that way. So I would say that love necessitates. One more example that I'll use from the Gospels. You know, someone once said in a post, you know, with sexual ethics, they said, well, you know, Jesus came in and he told the Pharisees, you know, whoever is sinless can cast the first stone, right? And they put down their stones, right? Why? Because they realized that they themselves were sinners. But how does that gospel story end? He turns to the woman and he says, no one else has condemned you, neither do I. Go and sin no more. He does not say, hey, adultery doesn't matter, you know. Sleeping around doesn't matter. If it's wrong for you, it might be wrong for them, but it's not wrong for me, or the vice versa, you know. He doesn't say that. It is wrong what she was doing, but he doesn't condemn her, right? And he points out to her that it's wrong because he loves her. Because he loves her. Love necessitates that. So that's a very good question. That's a very good question.
Anastasia says we are called to judge actions, not hearts.
Mm-hmm.
We aren't called to condemn the sinner, as we are all sinners in one way or another. But we can encourage one another to walk in the right path. We should try to do that.
Amen. Absolutely.
And then Tyler has a lengthy quote.
Yep.
From Moses the Black.
Bam! I love Moses the Black.
That you can read later.
Okay. Moses the Black.
Yeah.
I love him. he was like a former
About how
slave.
God knows each one. Afflictions last but a short time, while peace is forever.
Right. And that's
Do not have hostile feelings towards it. I mean, anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So and we can talk about what we can see and what we can't see, right? What Anastasia is saying is we can judge actions and not people, and she's right, because we can see actions. What we can't see is hearts. So it's only the Lord that knows us, you know, our intentions, what it is that we really want, what the psychological baggage that we're working with, right? What it is that we're working against, you know. And so someone carrying out an action that is an inherently evil action will be will be seen by God in a different way than we can. We can see the action and we can judge the action, and we should judge the action, right? But where that person is coming from, and if they deserve to be condemned or not condemned for that, or whatever the case is, that comes from the judge, who sees more than just the actions, who knows us better than we know ourselves. So that's a very good point. That's a very good point. So what's the dynamic translation? Love the player, hate the game, I think is the...
Don't play the game.
Don't play the game. I don't know how that motto works, but it's along those lines. Right. So while Kim, before Kim comes back, she's just gone to check on little Ignatius, who has woken up. I want to talk about the new show that we were recommended to, called Upload.
There are a lot of graphic sexual scenes.
Yeah, I was about to go into that.
Appropriate.
Yeah, it's not appropriate for a number of people. I'm not sure if it's really appropriate for us. We might
I'm
just
not
stop
sure,
watching
like,
it.
especially that first episode.
It's kind of calmed down since that, though. I think that they were trying to use that to sell
The first episode has...
Yeah. There's a thing in the States, by the way, which kind of relates to this.
You want to sit with Dad for a minute?
It's
Show everybody
called...
your hair.
Yeah, nice hair, buddy. Almost spilled the coffee. Yes.
He wants to look out.
Look at the cars and the trucks. That's okay. There's a thing in the States called VidAngel, which I want them to bring it up to Canada. VidAngel people, if you're watching this, please bring it up to Canada. So
they're not watching.
They're not watching, but maybe they will later. It's an app or a service that you pay for, which plugs into Amazon Prime Video and Netflix, and it edits out whatever you want edited out. So you can go in and say, I'm sick and tired of the Lord's name being used in vain here. With one click, you can edit out every single blasphemy in the whole show. You don't want to see nudity? Gone. You don't want to see sexual innuendo even? Gone. And they take it
even
out.
have words like
by
butt.
scene. Yeah, if you don't want to hear the word butt, gone. They can take it right out. I think that's amazing. So then you can watch the story for what the story has to say without subjecting yourself or your children to explicit material that you don't want to see. Violence, all of it. You can choose. It gives you like a breakdown of all the different scenes and what you want to see and what you don't want to see. And you just click, 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 and it's done. So amazing. I wish that we had had that, but anyway, there were a couple graphic scenes uploaded. I don't.
But it makes for really good conversation.
But it's a very interesting story. That's right.
Story.
Yeah. What did you find interesting about it?
Well, I feel like we're moving in that direction, right?
What direction? What's the story about?
The story is that this young gentleman lives in a world where you can upload your consciousness to a digital afterlife. So he's about to die, and he gets uploaded into a digital afterlife that his girlfriend pays for.
Right.
So now he's alive, and he can, through virtual reality and all this other stuff, they can communicate with each other. He can talk with people outside of this virtual reality. He has friends within this virtual reality, but he's owned by his girlfriend.
Right.
His existence is dependent on her
if
not
she's paying the
pressing
bills.
delete.
Yeah.
And this idea that and there's another character who doesn't want to be uploaded. he wants to die and be with his wife, who wasn't uploaded, and he's mocked for believing that there's like a heaven or
He's a
another
Lud.
place. They call him a Lud.
Because he's a Luddite. He's
Yeah.
probably against that sort of things.
Yeah.
So it raises
It's
some
good,
very interesting questions.
questions about like how we view the afterlife and death, and
Now, on a previous episode of Coffee and Cassock, we talked a bit about transhumanism in the episode of Picard, where he gets a new body. Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Ha ha ha! Anyway,
Susan says you also pick and choose your afterlife based on your wealth.
yes, you do. So there's inequality. There's like the 2 gigs. Who only have 2 gigs of access or whatever, so they've got to like not think hard or not move around, and they don't have any.
Crystal says she enjoys the Chosen. Remember that Chosen one?
Oh yes, the Chosen. Yeah, we watched I think half of the first episode. By the way, that Chosen one, that's definitely an Eastern Cadillo.
We got to the point where he's incensing Mary Magdalene,
and I was like, that's a Cadillo. What's going on here?
and then he didn't want to watch anymore. So we have
No, well, that's not true.
This is the problem with someone who is an academic. When you see these like historical inaccuracies within a show, it's difficult to then enter into the story because it's like it's harder. So we got to get back into that. We got to try again.
You know, these academics, they just want to watch silly things like Uploaded. But anyway, Uploaded, you can see sort of how there's a disembodying going on, right? The whole thing is based on the premise that you can still be a person without your body, you know.
20 minutes.
That you, in fact, what's you is just your mind or your brain, right? That's back to Descartes with I think, therefore I am, or at least a reduced version of Descartes, a simplified version of Descartes. You know, we're not just a Deus ex machina, the God in the machine. We're not just a spirit, you know, with a mic machine working around. I am a body and a soul at the same time. And so that whole thing goes against the integrated nature of the human person. And back to sexual ethics, right? So do things like contraception. So do things like surrogacy. So do things like all sorts of situations that fail to treat the body with the amount of respect it deserves because of the integrated nature of what it means to be a human being, a human person. It is inherently a depersonalizing thing. And that's what that means. It splits a human being. It reduces a human being. So it's wrong for the reason why pornography is wrong. Same sort of deal.
Isn't that a virtual type of hell, wanting to separate your life from God by wanting to live on in a virtual afterlife without God?
Yes, I would agree. I would agree very much. Yeah, you ought to be very careful about that. What do we want? C.S. Lewis. I can't do any Coffee and Cassock without at least quoting C.S. Lewis once. Says that everyone gets what they want, right? At the end of time, you know, you're gonna get what it is that you wanted. And so, heaven for C.S. Lewis is an acquired taste, and I think he's right about that personally. You know, I think that you know, real love is a lot more demanding and a lot harder and a lot more real than what people think it is in modern day life.
Oh, are you gonna do the dishes for me after this?
No, because that's real love. No, I maybe later. Anyway, so heaven, you know, as the place where real love is par excellence, you know, you gotta warm up to that. You know, you gotta change yourself with the Lord's help. You gotta ask the Lord to change you into the type of person who's going to be at home in heaven, because it's foreign to our existence, right? We think that heaven is kind of this, you know, what they think in Uploaded. They keep calling it heaven, which is this, you know, this old folks home where everything is done for them. They don't have to worry about anything. They just kind of sit around and, you know, be, you know, peaceful the whole time, whatever the case is, and you know, that's not really what heaven is. It's not, you know, sort of an old folks home. And so we have to be turned into the type of people who are going to want to be in heaven, who are going to be at home there, and that's a hard thing, and that work starts here. Great observation.
The character is never happy. Fun fact, one of the actors is a former Holy Grad and a student I taught.
Is that Susan?
Mm-hmm.
No way!
Which one? Susan,
No,
tell
no,
us.
don't do it. I don't think she's allowed to. She doesn't have to. You don't have to, Susan. Yeah.
She can?
I don't know. But very cool. Very cool.
If you're allowed to tell us.
They're a former grad, I suppose. You know.
It's a former grad.
Anyway.
This is
Yeah?
the priest, everything is confidential.
Yeah, that's right.
Everything is confidential. Okay, Father Mike, you have 15 minutes left.
15 minutes left, or else we're just gonna nix it because I've exhausted everything.
The one who gets killed.
Oh.
Lots of people get killed. I'm trying to think who gets killed.
Oh. Like the one that gets in the car?
No.
Why not? She gets driven off the thing.
It's not the main actor.
No, but what about the ant detective?
Shh, now you've given it away.
Well, there we go.
Fitzer. Oh, the banker. She's going. I'll explain to you later.
Okay, that's interesting. Anyway, I'm not recommending uploading. I'm not saying it's great. I'm just saying that people are watching.
It's made
and
for
I'm
good
commenting.
discussion.
It's
for
made for
us,
good discussion. Yeah.
But use
Yeah.
comments
We
like.
don't give our hearts to many stories. I got to be honest. Like,
I don't think we've given our heart to this story.
No, we're very critical when it comes to this sort of thing. But it does lead to some very interesting conversations, and that's what it should do, right? You know, yeah. So it's an interesting story for sure.
Oh, I found my broom.
Wonderful. Okay, last comment of the coffee and the Cassock session, and I'll put away the bioethics cup until next time. Next bioethics question.
You gotta wait a minute because there's a leg, right?
Yeah. Wonderful.
That little corner where he's playing, the best invention ever.
Yeah. Man, we got Ignatius here. You guys can't see him, but he's off in the corner here, looking outside, playing with his cars.
We made him a little corner.
Now you can see him.
Hey, bud, say hi.
There he goes, doing his thing. So we have our Jesus Prayer 40 beginning on June 8th. It's already
Here we
filled
got a
up.
question. Ready?
Yeah.
Can you talk, Father Mike, about in vitro fertilization eggs being used in vaccinations?
Yes, it's wrong. I don't know a lot about that, but I do know enough to know that whenever you use another human being, period, you use them, it's wrong. So this goes back to, well, we want to do something good with it, right? We want to cure people. You know, we want a good end to come out of a bad action, which was the fact that we are going to kill these children. You can't have that. It's wrong. It's wrong. You know? So yeah, how it works scientifically, I don't really understand how that works. It has something to do with the fact that these baby cells haven't differentiated or something like that, or I don't know why it has to be, but from what I've heard, and someone who knows more than me can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm always into that. But from what I've heard, they can do the same things with fertilize like the IV cells without those babies. Basically, they can do the same thing. They can develop those inoculations in a different manner. I know that the Alberta bishops have just written to, I don't know if it's the Alberta bishops or the CCCB, the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops, but they've written, I think it's the CCCB actually, they wrote to the Prime Minister and said that it is morally unacceptable for Catholics to accept inoculations from sources that have aborted babies. And so they are asking the Prime Minister to not allow that in the production of the cure or the antibody injection for this COVID-19. So that's a real thing, and it is wrong. So, and that's why it's wrong. It uses someone, it uses their very life so that someone else can benefit, and that's wrong. It's utilitarianism, the idea that
Anastasia says adult stem cells are able to differentiate as embryonic stem cells.
There we go.
Yeah, so you can use adult stem cells for the
You
same
can use adult stem cells. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Anastasia. Good. All right.
We got 10 minutes left.
10 minutes left.
There's 12 people watching.
Good. Well, I think that's where we'll leave it. You know what? Before we do that, though, I can point to you. This is an opportunity to show you in our Ukrainian Catholic Catechism. So we've got our own Ukrainian Catholic Catechism, which is not at odds with the Catechism of the Catholic Church, but it is a parallel catechism which tries to explain the same truth using the patrimony of the Eastern churches, or in particular the Ukrainian Catholic Church. It's a great resource, and we've all seen the why IVF is wrong and why surrogacy is wrong in another way. So that's in paragraph 875 and 876. However, medical intervention is permissible only if it will facilitate the effectiveness of the sexual act to conceive children, but by no means replace it. Once again, we're back to acts, right? That's how we start our moral investigation. What is it that we are doing? And so it's not wrong for a couple to try to have medical intervention to work in a corrective fashion within the conjugal act itself. That's not a problem. But it's when you replace it that it becomes a problem. This is because the dignity of conceiving a child necessarily requires the marital sexual act of a man and a woman as the spiritual and corporal union of persons in love. Okay? So the spiritual union of persons, spiritual and corporal union. Once again, human beings are body and soul together at the same time. It is not that my soul is rattling around inside my body, which is a case for it, right? It is that the fact that a person is both those things at the same time, and that is why you can't mess with that at the root of it. 876 talks about the interference of such external individuals in the mystery of conception of a new life is in itself a moral evil. And a woman traffics her motherhood. A child born this way is reduced to an object of commerce, right? They are something that you buy. So that's from the Ukrainian Catholic Catechism. If you are further interested in doing more research on this, the social concept document of the Moscow Patriarchate, released in 2000, has got a section on this in section 12, paragraph 4. And the Ecumenical Patriarchate has also put out an unofficial document. I have no idea how this is working. I've got a good friend of mine. We're trying to figure out what an unofficial document put out by a patriarchate actually means. But it is an unofficial document of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, which talks about, it's called For the Life of the World Towards a Social Concept, I think, something along those lines. But very recent, 2020, was released in January. And they also talk a little bit about sort of surrogacy, as far as, well, they don't talk about surrogacy, but they talk about reproductive technology a little bit, not very much, in that document as well. So those are two other places you can look besides the CCC and the Ukrainian Catholic Catechism on this question. Thank you so much for this question. I really enjoyed chatting about it. I hope I was clear about
what page number?
For what? Which one? Which page number for which one?
Okay, Tyler, he'll get back to you afterwards.
Yeah. PM me, Tyler. I'll try to work that out for you. I hope I was clear. Christians are moral absolutists. They are not moral relativists. But that doesn't mean that morality is always easy to sort of discern. Although, I would argue it's much more easier to discern than it is to do. What I mean by that is it's easier to know what's right and wrong than it is to have the courage and the ability to carry out what's right and wrong. And so that's why we need the Lord so desperately in our lives, brothers and sisters. All right, until next week, I think we will we'll take a break here. But
send questions.
Send questions. It's always nice chatting with you, and have a great week. God bless.